Hi everyone, this is the Ground Pass mini-pod. First of our kind of midway updates between our Bike Weekly podcast episodes. Obviously, you're probably used to hearing Anastasia's voice, but sorry, you're stuck with me this time. And I'm going to be taking you through everything that's just happened this week in Monte Carlo and the Billie Jean King Cup, as well as looking ahead to what we'll be talking about next week a little bit as the tour continues to move on clay. We're going to start with actually an email that we had from Michelle Zenz. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly, Michelle. Do let us know if I haven't. But I asked on social media, and Ground Pass asked on our social media around for stories of people's visits to Monte Carlo, and picked this one out because although it's not necessarily the most current story, it's a story that makes me smile. And Michelle says, my husband and I were at the Monte Carlo tournament in 2014. My 6-month-old baby made a shrieking loud noise during Novak's service motion against Garcia Lopez. He stopped, looked in the crowd and laughed. He went on to serve his second serve, and I got that child out of that stadium so damn fast. Mortified. Michelle, my question to you is this. Obviously, this was 10 years ago now. Does your child at least like tennis now? Or maybe it was an early indication that they did not. But I'd love to hear back and know if, they love tennis. Or at least they're starting to get into tennis like their mum. But I'd love to hear more stories from that. And like, if any of you are going to Barcelona this week, Stuttgart, even any of the other 250 tournaments that are happening, we'd love to hear from you about what it's like to go, who you saw, and a little bit about your experience of going. Obviously, Michelle's overwhelming experience and memory is of her child disrupting Novak Djokovic's serve. He took it pretty well by the sound of it, and you kind of have to, really. Not aware of anything like that happening at this tournament. I guess before I kind of talk about the results, I think Monte Carlo is an event that a lot of people do want to go to at least once. You know, we talked on the last podcast about the European clay tournaments being like going on holiday, going on a summer holiday by the beach where there's tennis. And you can get that to a certain extent in Miami, but Europe is a very sort of different vibe, a bit more relaxed, a bit more chill. With Monte Carlo, that reminder is ever stark because pretty much from the stand, you can see the vast blue ocean stretching out into the distance, the Mediterranean all before you. Every camera angle picks it up. I'm pretty sure you can see it from the stands as well. It's a view in tennis that's only rivaled by the Austrian Open and the Swiss Open, which boast very different views from around the courts, where the tennis is kind of nestled in amongst the mountains and the forests of Central Europe. Don't get me wrong, a beachside holiday sounds great in Monte Carlo or Nice, because I hear a lot of people recommending staying in Nice and travelling in. And that's what James recommended in his article that he shared. But I wanted to say that that's kind of the overriding sort of I think Monte Carlo kind of is almost the ultimate European clay court event in that sense. The others tend to be maybe a little bit noisy, a bit more like Roland Garros, whereas, if you want a quieter event, Monte Carlo is the place to go. And at Monte Carlo, we saw Stefanos Tsitsipas win the title there, which no one really expected because he's a player that hasn't been in a huge amount of great form in the last sort of year or so, has dropped out the top 10, except now he's back in the top 10, back up to world number 7, just behind the man he beat in the final, Casper Ruud. Tsitsipas has found his mojo again, serving well, hitting his forehand. He's won Monte Carlo twice before. It's his third title here and seems to be very much his home from home. Tsitsipas is someone who there was a lot of hope for in his career a few years ago. I think if you asked who the best players in the world are in kind of 2021, Tsitsipas's name would have been on the list as like one of the main challengers, along with Zverev and Medvedev, to Novak Djokovic and Rafael Nadal. Carlos Alcaraz hadn't appeared on the scene yet, nor had Yannick Sinner. And actually, it was interesting because Tsitsipas and Ruud made for a very interesting potential final. Tsitsipas beat Sinner in 3 sets in a controversial match that was decided by some questionable umpiring, particularly with the line judges. And Casper Ruud managed to take advantage of Djokovic not being quite on his day to finally get a win over Djokovic, but sadly wasn't really able to compete with Tsitsipas very much in the final. Tsitsipas very much dominating that. But 2 clay court specialists doing their thing in Monte Carlo. That was kind of the vibe of that event, the results. And now it sets things up very interestingly going into Barcelona this week, with Tsitsipas possibly being the favourite for that title as well. On the women's side, at the Billie Jean King Cup, no WTA tournaments taking place. It was all about qualifying for the Billie Jean King Cup finals that are going to be happening later this year in Seville. It's going to be happening kind of around late October, early November time. Probably beginning of November, actually. Yeah, November. And there were 8 ties trying to confirm the final 8 teams that will be taking part in the event, with 4 already decided. Those 4 teams being Canada as the defending champions, Italy because they made the final last year, a wild card going to Czechia, and Spain getting automatic place as the hosts. The USA, as expected, demolished Belgium. It looked a bit touch and go at first, but once Jessica Pegula and Emma Navarro warmed up and got things going, it became very much a foregone conclusion that the USA would make it through. In addition to resounding wins for Australia against Mexico and Poland against Switzerland. We also saw Naomi Osaka lead the Japan team to a 3-1 win over Kazakhstan, whilst Germany scored a 3-1 away win to Brazil. Slovakia got back into the Billie Jean King Cup finals for the first time in 16 years by beating Slovenia 4-0. There were 2 other away wins in addition to Germany's win over Brazil, which was a potentially closely contested tie. One actually took place in the United States because the selected host, Ukraine, obviously couldn't host, but Ukraine were taking on Romania. And that was the only tie that went down to a decider, with Romania clinching it, coming from 2-0 down to win 3-2 and make the finals. And for British fans, this is the one that you've all been building up to. Britain came from 1-0 down to beat France in their backyard in conditions that shouldn't have suited the team, but ultimately turned out to be fine, especially thanks to Emma Raducanu playing some of the best tennis I have seen her play for a long, long time. Emma Raducanu is very much a front foot first player, but this is the first time where she's really shown that, I think, for a while. And maybe the atmosphere of being part of a team really changed that. It was a great contest, but Raducanu's influence should not be understated on that result. So I guess where to next in the world of tennis? And that's a good question. Barcelona on the ATP Tour and Stuttgart on the WTA Tour are the two big events taking place. There are other events going on around the tour, kind of small events. There's one in Munich in which you'll see Alexander Zverev, Holger Rune playing. There are some Count Khachanov. There are some big names taking part. Taylor Fritz as well, actually, and Jack Draper for the Brits will be taking the world on in Munich. Whilst Rouen, you've got the return of Mira Andreeva, and more importantly, Naomi Osaka will be in action as she looks to get her clay swing underway. One of the most famous players in the world, taking on the unique challenge that indoor clay represents. But most of the eyes of the world will be on Barcelona and Stuttgart. We're going to start with Barcelona because I mentioned that already. Carlos Alcaraz was due to be the top seed, but he's had to pull out with an injury. And the fact he's pulled out with Monte Carlo with the same injury, now we're starting to get into the point where how much of his clay season is going to be disrupted, because Madrid is coming up next week. So when Anastasia and I record our next podcast, we'll be looking forward to Madrid, where Alcaraz is a two-time defending champion. How much is this going to disrupt things? And also, how much is this going to impact Roland Garros later in the year? It's all going to be about building up for the French Open. And if Alcaraz isn't a factor there, that opens things up a fair bit. But Barcelona's got a lot to look forward to, all the same. Andrei Rublev moves into being the top seed there. Cameron Norrie for the Brits is taking part. Not really much of an American impact, I would say, at that tournament. I think the big story is actually going to be, how is Rafael Nadal going to be doing? Because at time of recording, he seems to be back. He didn't play Monte Carlo, but his practices seem to be suggesting that he's able to play. He's got Flavio Cobolli as his opening round, and if he wins that, he's playing Alex de Minaur in round 2. Barcelona is a very significant tournament for Rafael Nadal. Anastasia will tell you that although she's not mentioned it on the podcast, she is a Rafael Nadal fan. And Nadal at Barcelona, it's one of the tournaments where he's just ruled the most of his career. So much so that they named the main court after him. Rafael Nadal playing on Rafael Nadal court is an opportunity too good to miss for a man who's looking to wind his career down and play at least once more on a court that not only bears his name, but holds a lot of special memories for him. How well he does, he's going to take it match by match. I'm looking forward to seeing how he does, and how, again, that impacts his Roland Garros preparations, because, his body is very fragile. Is this going to be the only time we see him before he plays the French? Who knows? Guess it's going to come down to how he plays. Barcelona should be fascinating in that respect. And then we have Stuttgart, which is an absolutely packed draw for the WTA. You have all of the top 4 players involved: Iga Swiatek, Aryna Sabalenka, Elena Rybakina, and Coco Gauff. are all in action. You have a fair few top 10 players as well. Jessica Pegula was going to play, but she's pulled out. But you still have Marketa Vondrousova, Ons Jabeur, and Yelena Ostapenko, and Zheng Qinwen, rounding out the top 8 seeds. Other people involved, Emma Raducanu is going to be playing. She's actually going to be playing former Wimbledon and US Open champion Angelique Kerber in round 1. They've both got wild cards. Other names to keep, and there's so many other names to keep an eye out for. Every single match at Stuttgart is going to be a must-watch. There is no one in there that doesn't have a really good reputation. This feels like a Masters event in so many ways. It's only a 32-player draw. Actually, probably even less, 28 players. I think the top 8 get a bye. Top 4 get a bye, even. Only 28 players involved, but what a list of 28. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. That tournament feels like the ultimate exhibition of WTA tennis, of the best going up against each other, second only to the WTA finals. And actually, it's a tournament that I really, really want to go to one day. If they keep getting these kind of fields, I feel like it'd be foolish for me as someone who loves the WTA not to go. I've actually never attended an event outside of the UK as a fan, or at all, really. I don't think Anastasia's been outside the US, actually. So maybe one day we'll be able to do that and record our journey for Ground Pass. So I guess then actually that brings us back to the beginning. I absolutely loved reading Michelle's email earlier. Absolutely loved it. Made me smile. And I'd love to hear from anyone who's going to Stuttgart about what the experience is, and tell me, does it live up to the hype? Is it worth me going for a visit? Or is it worth paying a trip for Barcelona? Are you going to Barcelona? Are you going to be basking in all the culture there, as well as all the tennis? What's it like to go to Barcelona? Hopefully we'll be hearing from some of you there. If you do want to share your stories, send us a message on Instagram, Threads, X, Twitter. Send us an email, or even send us a voice note to that email. And that email address will be put in the show notes at the end of this. So there you go. There's your update of everything around the world tennis-wise, as we very much now root ourselves in Europe, get stuck into clay, and get ready for more magnificent tennis coming your way. So thanks everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed. And Anastasia will be recording again next week, where we will continue to bring you more tennis on the ground.